The hum of the jet engines blended with the shuffle of boarding passengers. In the polished calm of the first-class cabin, a sharply dressed man adjusted his cufflinks and settled into his assigned seat. His posture carried quiet confidence, the kind built from years of climbing ladders no one thought he could climb. But before the seatbelt sign even lit up, the mood shifted. A flight attendant leaned down, her tone clipped, her eyes cold. "Sir, you'll need to move. This seat is reserved for another passenger." He looked at the ticket in his hand, his name printed clearly, his boarding pass scanned without issue. Calmly, he replied, "This is my seat." Passengers nearby stiffened, sensing something wrong. Yet the attendant's voice grew sharper, cutting through the cabin like a blade. "Don't make this difficult. Please get up." The air grew heavy. Whispers stirred. Some averted their gaze, others glanced at the man with sympathy but remained silent. He adjusted his posture, dignity unshaken, even as humiliation pressed down on him in public view. And then the unspoken question hung in the air: why him? But what the flight attendant didn't realize was who this man really was, and who was quietly watching. The cabin, once a space of quiet luxury, now pulsed with tension. The man remained seated, his jaw set, his eyes steady. He wasn't just any traveler, he was a leader, a symbol of resilience who had shattered barriers in boardrooms where few looked like him. But here, at 30,000 feet, none of that shielded him from being treated as less. Around him, the social dynamics unfolded in silence. A white couple in the next row glanced away uncomfortably, their unease betraying silent disapproval. A younger passenger pulled out a phone, subtly recording, sensing the moment was bigger than a simple seat dispute. Meanwhile, another attendant hovered nearby, lips tight, clearly torn between duty and decency. The CEO knew the stakes weren't about leather seats or cabin service. This was about dignity, about a message being broadcast in real time to everyone watching. Was he allowed to sit in the space he earned, or would prejudice strip him of it in plain sight? The murmurs grew. The weight of injustice pressed harder. And just as the situation seemed to corner him, it became clear: this was no minor conflict. But this was only the beginning, the moment before the storm. The lead attendant wasn't new to this role. For years, she had cultivated an air of superiority in the cabin, hiding behind policy, whenever her actions drew questions. She had a reputation among colleagues, efficient, yes, but also quick to remind passengers, especially those who didn't fit her mold of first-class clientele, that they were only there by privilege, not by right. This wasn't the first time. A quiet complaint had once surfaced about her cold treatment of a Latina mother traveling with children. Another whispered story involved her dismissing an elderly black man who had asked for assistance, telling him curtly, "Sir, this isn't coach." Each incident faded without consequence, covered by technicalities and paperwork. Her entitlement wasn't born in a day. It grew with every unchecked act, every laugh shared with colleagues at a passenger's expense, every nod of approval from a manager who chose convenience over accountability. She believed she controlled the atmosphere, that her word inside the cabin was final. But this time was different. The man she sought to humiliate wasn't powerless. His silence wasn't submission, it was patience. What the oppressor didn't know was that their target was not powerless. The man at the center of this humiliation wasn't just another passenger. He was a black CEO, a leader who had built his success from the ground up. Raised in a modest neighborhood by parents who believed in education and integrity, he had faced prejudice before, in classrooms, in boardrooms, and in quiet corners where decisions were made without him. Each slight had fueled his determination rather than dimmed his spirit. Years of resilience had carried him into the corporate world, where he fought not only for his own seat at the table but for others who were denied one. His company was known for diversity programs and scholarships, efforts rooted in his personal belief that dignity wasn't negotiable. Travel was routine for him. Flights, conferences, negotiations, these were part of his daily life. He knew how to carry himself with calm authority, how to remain composed when eyes lingered on his skin before his credentials. But this moment was different. Being asked to give up his rightful seat wasn't about inconvenience. It was a public attempt to strip away dignity he had earned many times over. And in this moment, the very strength he had built would become the oppressor's undoing. The air in the cabin thickened as the flight attendant leaned closer, her voice sharpening. "Sir, this seat is reserved. You'll need to move immediately." The words weren't a request. They were a command backed by a smirk that told everyone watching this wasn't about policy. It was about power. The CEO stayed seated, his back straight, his jaw tight. Around him, passengers exchanged uneasy glances. A mother clutched her child a little tighter. A businessman lowered his newspaper but didn't speak. Silence spread like wildfire, every eye fixed on the unfolding standoff. The attendant raised her voice, calling for backup. Soon, another crew member joined, repeating the demand with rehearsed firmness. The message was clear: this black man's presence in a seat of privilege was unacceptable to them. Still, he didn't move. His calm composure clashed with their rising hostility, exposing their desperation. Whispers rippled through the cabin. Some shook their heads in quiet disbelief, while others avoided eye contact, afraid of becoming part of the confrontation. The humiliation pressed in from all sides, but he refused to surrender his dignity. But just when it seemed the victim had no power left, a single phone call changed everything. He reached slowly into his jacket pocket, not with anger, but with the steady poise of a man who had nothing to prove. Passengers leaned forward, eyes locked, as his phone lit up. Without raising his voice, he dialed a number that seemed to carry weight far beyond the cabin walls. "Hello?" he said evenly. "It's happening again. Right now. I'm on your airline, and your crew is attempting to remove me from my assigned seat." The attendants froze, exchanging nervous glances. A ripple of whispers spread down the aisle. Who was this man speaking to? Why did his tone sound less like a complaint and more like a warning? Moments later, the plane's intercom crackled. A voice from the cockpit broke the tension. "This is your captain. We're experiencing a situation that requires immediate attention. Crew, remain in position until further instruction." The attendants' confidence faltered. Their voices, once sharp and commanding, now shrank into nervous silence. Passengers reached for their phones, some already recording, others furiously typing hashtags that would soon ignite online. #SeatForAll, #Dignity Denied. Then came the moment that shattered the cabin's silence. The CEO's phone buzzed again. He lifted it to his ear, his expression unchanged. "Yes, understood." He hung up, turned to the attendants, and spoke calmly. "Your supervisors will be addressing this before we leave the ground." Gasps erupted across the cabin. A man in the back muttered, "Wait, who is he?" The attendants, once towering with authority, now stood small, pale, and uncertain. Their power had slipped through their fingers in a single phone call. The passengers felt the shift too. What had begun as humiliation transformed into vindication, and the energy in the cabin swung like a pendulum. The oppressors had been exposed, not just to him, but to everyone watching. And by the time the truth came out, the oppressor's fate was sealed. The fallout didn't wait for the plane to land. Within minutes, the videos passengers had taken went viral. Twitter feeds lit up like wildfire, hashtags climbing to the top of trending, #SeatForAll, #Dignity Over Discrimination, #FlyingWhileBlack. News anchors scrambled to cover the breaking story. Clips replayed across every major network. A black CEO, calm and composed, standing against an airline crew that thought they could strip him of his dignity. Commentators debated whether this was an isolated lapse in judgment, or evidence of systemic rot within the airline industry. By the following morning, the airline's stock price dipped as shareholders demanded answers. Activists staged protests outside terminals, holding signs that read, "We're not going back," and "Respect every passenger." Even celebrities joined in, their voices amplifying the outrage to millions more. And then came the most stunning move. The company announced that the entire crew from that flight had been placed on immediate suspension pending investigation. It wasn't just accountability, it was an admission of guilt. But as the headlines spread, One question lingered in everyone's mind: was this truly justice, or just damage control? For the CEO at the center of it all, the ordeal was not just about a seat. It was about a lifetime of moments where dignity was tested and humanity was questioned. Sitting quietly at home after the storm of headlines, he reflected on what had happened, not with bitterness, but with resolve. He spoke publicly days later, his voice steady. "This was never just about me. It was about the right of every traveler, every person, to be treated with respect. No one should have to buy dignity. It should come standard." Those words struck deeper than any corporate apology. They reframed the incident not as a clash between one man and one crew, but as a mirror held up to society. The lesson was clear: prejudice, no matter how casual or institutional, corrodes trust, corrodes community, and corrodes humanity itself. And yet, from that moment came hope. Because the backlash proved people were no longer willing to look away. His calm resilience became a rallying point, a reminder that dignity always outlasts hate. Because this wasn't just one man's fight. It was everyone's. And so we returned to the title. Black CEO removed from VIP seat for white passenger. Entire flight crew was replaced on the spot. It wasn't just a headline. It was proof that power built on arrogance crumbles, and dignity, once defended, cannot be taken away. What happened on that flight will be remembered not just as an injustice, but as a turning point. A moment when an act of humiliation was flipped into a symbol of accountability. When one man's quiet strength forced an entire system to confront itself. But the real power doesn't lie in boardrooms, or in airline policies, or even in the hands of CEOs. It lies with us, the witnesses, the storytellers, the ones who refuse to stay silent when dignity is denied. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Comment on it. Talk about it at your dinner table. Make sure stories like this spread so wide that no one can pretend they didn't hear. Because every time we share, we remind the world, dignity is not optional. It is universal. And together, we make sure no one forgets it.